Good morning, everyone. You're not Father Jeff.
I'm not Father Jeff at all.
It's his birthday today, so he is still retreating with Bishop Lopes. And so we brought in someone else.
Should we sing happy birthday to him today?
Let's wait till the end to sing happy birthday to him.
It has to happen, though.
We'll sing happy birthday.
Let's not forget.
We won't forget. So this is Adam Stevenson. He is a parishioner here. He's been a parishioner here for how long?
I think that we moved into our house across the street like 13, I think. So it's probably like 7 years. It always seems like it's different. You're like, God, we've been here parishioners like 2 years, I think. And then it's like, oh, 2 years. No, it's actually been way longer than that. So just like everything else in life. So I'd say it's 7 years.
About 7 years?
Yeah.
And you kind of worked here as a youth minister, right?
So I guess the way we got involved, we didn't even know this place existed. I think like most of Omaha, you didn't know what was over the hill south. So we found a house here, started coming to church here, and Rachel met Kelly Deneen at Mass. You know, like those things those appeals at Mass that you give that you never think anything's going to come of them. It's like, hey, does anybody want to help out with youth groups? So Rachel said, yeah, she'd help out, and we started getting involved in youth ministry there. So we were involved in youth ministry as small group leaders. And then there was like a transition period where it was like, hey, we're either going to have youth ministry or we're not going to have youth ministry in case someone keeps it going. And so we just said, like, all right, we'll just step in and help out with it. So that's how we were involved here with youth ministry.
But you're a youth minister and a young adult minister at St. Patrick's.
At St. Pat's, yeah. I needed a job in 2015, so I called up St. Pat's and they said, yeah, you can work for us. I don't know why they said that, but it's been great working over there, so I really enjoy it. It's awesome.
Awesome. So if you are around this parish, you've probably seen Adam. If you go to 9 a.m. Mass, you've definitely seen him. If you go to Donuts after 9 a.m. Mass,
man.
You can't miss him.
I think I come to Mass. It seems like I come to Mass to shake hands and eat donuts. I think that's pretty much... There's something that happens in between shaking hands and donuts because we haven't had shaking hands and donuts for a long time and I still come here. So there must be something in between. That maybe is more important, potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think just a little background on you. You went to college, did sports.
Yeah,
medicine?
I guess I was like a typical kid. I grew up Lutheran actually, so I wasn't always Catholic. I grew up as a Lutheran, and then I met this gal named Rachel when I was 16. So maybe you guys know Rachel. We were high school sweethearts, and then we went to college. We went to K-State together. I was a year older, and she was a year younger. Went to K-State. To play football there, and then we got engaged in the middle of our experience there in college, and she just said, hey, if we're going to get married, we're going to be of one faith. We're not going to be Catholic and Lutheran or Lutheran and Catholic. We're going to be either Catholic and Catholic or Lutheran and Lutheran. I didn't really have any good reasons for us to be Lutheran, and she had some... So we went through our theology on tap first, and then we did RCA, and it was a good experience, kind of like people experience here at St. Charles. They experienced a good time at RCAA, so I was like, this seems like the good thing to do, so we just became Catholic. And then we went to Maryville, Missouri, at Northwest Missouri State, and we spent a few years there. And then we came to Omaha, and I came to Omaha to work as a strength and conditioning coach, and Rachel was a teacher. So that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah. And so it wasn't until, you were happy doing that for a while.
Yeah, I guess that was probably like the thrust of our time here. Rachel was teaching a bunch. She was a music teacher. Now she's an administrator. And I was just working in a gym, just loving it, and I kind of gave my life to the gym. Like, I think that a lot of men want to give their lives to their profession. You see that, as sometimes guys spend too much time in their jobs. I wouldn't say I spent too much time, but it was definitely one of the most important things in my life. And then I started meeting some Christians when I was at the gym. I think that, and when you get to know people, you stop talking so much about just like and maybe we're going to talk about this later on too, you stop talking about like all the things going on in the world. You stop talking about Twitter feuds and stuff like that. You stop talking about what the show you just watched or the Huskers, and you start talking about serious things, and they start talking to me about Jesus. And while I was a Christian, and I was even coming here to Mass at St. Charles, I think I probably came here to Mass for probably 2 or 3 years where I was coming here and probably nobody would have known who I was because I was just this guy that would just come in and just check off the box at Mass. And then they started talking to me about Jesus, and I was like, man, I've never heard about this Jesus before.
Yeah, they were just, you weren't taking your faith too seriously.
Oh, no. Like, Rachel was really just kind of like dragging me along to come to Mass all the time. And these people started talking about Jesus in a way that I've never really heard before, and I think it's because I never really listened. I think that's the thing. Like, it wasn't that it wasn't being said. I just wasn't listening, and I soon found that out. I went on a retreat. So I guess with youth ministry, Rachel and I were involved in youth ministry, and Father Hunky was still here, and Kelly Deneen was still in charge of youth ministry, and they had like a youth ministry night over here, a vocations night over here for youth ministry. And Father Hunky was here, Deacon Dave was here, and there were some brothers and sisters, and then I think Deacon Dave and Peggy, they took over like the married couple as well. And so we're just talking about different vocations, and I just heard Deacon Dave talk about being a deacon, and I was like, wow, that sounds really cool. I want to do that. So I went up to Deacon Dave and I said, hey man, I want to be a deacon. Where do I sign up? And he's like, hold on there, whippersnapper. Like, it's going to take a little bit more than that. So he recommended we went on this CEC retreat. And I'll tell you what, after the CEC retreat, like I was the same person as I always am. Like I've always been an outgoing person, although you wouldn't have seen it at church. Like you would have just seen me as a guy that just walks in. But at the gym, I would have been like this outgoing personality, like the personality that you see now. But once I went to this CEC retreat and had this, and I think many people have an experience at CEC, and it kind of like, it stirs up their faith. Man, I left there like a lunatic, man, and I've probably never looked back since, I think it was 14 that I went, and so it's probably been 6 years now. So it's a decent amount of time. It's not forever, but I mean, it's a decent amount of time to continue to be zealous for your faith. So that's kind of how I changed, and next thing you know, I was out in front of the church shaking hands all the time just to help people, to really engage people, and just floating around donuts, meeting people that I would encounter there, meeting new faces. I think that's probably what I love the most, is just meeting new people. Just like I've had this realization in myself that Jesus is real, that and not only is he real, not only do I say like Jesus is a person, like yeah, I believe in Jesus, but like he actually affects my life, and I've seen the impacts that come from giving your life to Jesus, and therefore I want to meet people and tell them all about Jesus, and like not be too crazy. I think that when I first became Catholic, you weren't here yet, but man, I was, for the first 2 years I was pretty crazy, and I've kind of dialed back a little bit.
Believe so you've dialed back.
I've kind of like honed in a little bit where I'm not just like what. It's a little bit more focused.
Awesome, and so that was part of your realization while working at the gym.
Yeah. Because
I think you mentioned, instead of talking about some of those other things, you just started talking about Jesus all the time.
We were just talking about before we came on, there were certain things we weren't going to talk about on here, like, hey, let's stick towards these and stay away from these. And when you talk about when we know more now than ever, like there are just certain things you can say in public and certain things that are going to come with consequences if you say them. And I was working in the gym, and everyone had seen that I just kind of made a big shift where I was no longer talking about working out all the time. I had shifted into talking about Jesus and how Jesus impacts and informs my life, and so that obviously led to conflicts. And I think that rightfully so. They saw that, hey, there was this guy that was motivated to come in here and talk about working out, and that's why we hired him, because we wanted somebody to motivate our members to get working out and get in shape. And now all he does is talk about this stuff all the time. Like that's not what we hired him for. So we went our different ways, but it was I still love those folks there. Like it was a great part of my life, just because I have good friends that I still know, that I still talk to them, I still meet with them all the time, and it helped me a lot in learning how to talk with people, because you're getting a new person in every hour, and you're talking to them and trying to have conversations, and so it was an integral part of my life. Although it turned out not the way that any of us envisioned, but it didn't impact the friendship that I have with those folks whatsoever.
That's awesome.
It is good.
Yeah.
So now I find myself as a youth minister. So I spend all of my day, and I actually love my job better now, because I really, in some ways, get to do what I want. My job is just to go out there and motivate young kids, middle school, high schoolers, and which obviously leads into, as these kids get older, to 20-year-olds and things like that, and adults, motivating them to take Jesus seriously in their lives, and putting on retreats and trips. Like right now, if not for the coronavirus, we'd be knee-deep in summer trips.
Yeah, Steubenville would be coming right around the corner.
I think that Winnebago would be happening like right now, or would have just got over with. So it's a bummer that we can't go on those. But
yeah, and so Winnebago, because they overhauled that whole trip, and so Winnebago, you go up to Winnebago. Yeah. It's a reservation up there, and just a lot of poverty, a lot of drugs, and just a lot of it's really sad. You don't think that that's happening in Nebraska.
Yeah.
You think that that's maybe in some
poor
country, third world country.
Some of these guys also work in Mexico. When they talk about in these Mexican dumps, they'll go to these trash dumps and minister to these people. You think like, well, if I want to go do something like that, I've got to go to Mexico. But man, in this county up there, or in Macy, Nebraska, it's 90% poverty, and when you go there, it's a real shock. Like just this reality. So.
But now they've actually turned it so you actually are working with the people there.
Yeah.
And so you get to see the poverty, and it's a great experience. It's an eye-opening experience, especially for the youth. Yeah. Because we do live very privileged lives here in Omaha. Yeah. Anybody that's watching this, you have internet, and you can actually, if you want to go to a restaurant, you could probably go to a restaurant. Yeah. Up there, that's not really an option.
There are rarely. I mean, they're getting nicer parts up there. Like they're really you see it growing. You know, I think maybe that's a point of the discipleship too. You know, it's not about just like feeding someone, which is kind of how I approached Mass. You know, it's just like, I'm coming here and I'm getting fed, but I'm not really being empowered to be a self-feeder.
Right.
But you're seeing some of that stuff in Winnebago where these people are, it's not just where people are coming in and helping them. I mean, that still does happen where I'm just giving you things, but I'm actually, like, you see people that are being empowered in the community and they're really doing a lot of awesome stuff. Even next to St. Augustine's where we stay, there's like a nice little village right there where they have, like, when I say village, I mean like Village Point kind of village. Like, there's a village, when I say village, I forget what it's something village, and it has like nice stores in it that you want to go to, and like a coffee shop and stuff like that. So it's really cool to see that stuff happening.
Yeah, so it's one of those, like that old adage of, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime.
Totally.
So one of the things I brought you in for, is just to really talk about discipleship and what that looks like. Because that's a kind of a hot word in the Catholic circles for, the last 10 years-ish, it seems. It slowly started, and then my role is the director of evangelization and discipleship. So we know what evangelization is, but what is discipleship? And so I've been skimming this book a little bit. It's Into His Likeness by Edward Sri, and it's Be Transformed as a Disciple of Christ. And this just gives a lot of great background on what a disciple was. Yeah. And so a disciple literally was like walked in the dust of the rabbi is what the word means. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't just they went to class and learned things from him, but they actually imitated, did everything, followed him as if that was the only thing to do. Right. And so...
And that's a good point. You know, I think about you and in this whole journey too, talking about discipleship. And when you first came here and then started working at St. Charles, I don't know if it was before or after. I think you were still working for iHeartRadio.
Yeah, I was still working.
When we had met, and you just asked me the question, like, what? Like, because I was involved in youth ministry for a year or something like that, and you were like, what do you do all day long? And I had a bunch of things that I did as a youth minister that were just like, I don't know, like I think I said like, I usually talk with like 2 or 3 Protestants every week that are my friends, and we talk about church matters, and then I send out a bunch of emails and just pray that a bunch of moms get a hold of me and talk to me. And you're like, well, I don't know if that's what you should be doing. You know, I was like, well, what should I be doing? And you started talking to me more about going out and making disciples. You know, really investing in like not everybody, you know, but finding people in your life that are receptive to this message and really investing in them and teaching them how to be a disciple of Jesus.
Yeah, I think one of the ways that's shown, I mean, even the first time I met you, I don't know if you remember, there's baptism class. You and Rachel were teaching it.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
and that's I had just moved to the parish. Yep. And it was actually Diane's son and daughter-in-law.
They were there too.
Us, and then I think there was one other couple. I don't remember who they were. Yeah. Whoops.
You're right though. You're right. That's who it was.
But even at that point, you didn't invite me at that point, but you had started a men's group. I don't know did you start this group?
Yeah, that's a good point. So from when you go to CEC, when you go to the retreat, like many ones, they want to have you carry on the weekend, you know, so you'll have these different groups. And so Steve Schrod and I met over at Hy-Vee, and it was just us. There was a 20-something-year-old guy and a 50-something-year-old guy, and we just like sat across the table and we said like, all right, let's start doing this group thing. And there's definitely a format to follow through CEC, through Christians Encounter Christ. But it kind of ended up just morphing into like hey, if we saw a guy, we didn't want to like exclude him because we saw a need where guys just needed a place to fit in and they needed to know other guys in the parish. So we just started this group and just inviting guys in, and it's turned into, like, I'm not going to say it's like this massive group, but I think a lot of guys have gone through it, and we usually get, in my idea, like a decent turnout on Saturdays.
The fewest I've ever seen, I think, is 3 or 4.
I love those days the best, actually.
Because then you actually get to share.
I know.
So the Saturday mornings men's group, you may have heard of a Saturday mornings men's group. Yeah. It's not advertised through the parish or anything like that, but we meet at Hy-Vee at 7 o'clock. Well, non-quarantine times. Yeah. And we've had groups of up to like 20. Yeah. Something crazy. And we'll get into a little bit more of what that looks like, and even more of, because I came in at some point and said like, well, what direction? Right. We need some kind of a structure because it needs to be
and that's a good point. I think that when it comes to like discipleship, I like to think about it sometimes as like disciplines and relationship. Like I was all about like, hey, let's build relationships. You know, let's not only build a relationship with Jesus where we're having that vertical, but also the horizontal relationship with each other. We have this brotherhood. Right. And you're like, well, what kind of things are you guys striving after? Like, what do you guys talk about? And I'm just like, I don't know. We just talk about whatever. And you're like, well, wouldn't it be nice if you had some some checkpoints, some things to keep people accountable to that would be the disciplines of a disciple. Like, if you're following in the dust of a rabbi, you're going to do what a rabbi does. Okay, what does a rabbi do?
Right. And so, I think taking a step back, even just discipleship, back in the day, these people, in this book I learned, there's a term called Haverim. And so this is a Christian community that's all striving for the same goal. Mm-hmm. And the beauty back then was they literally immersed themselves. They lived, you'd think of it kind of like a religious order. They lived in this community, and they're all striving towards the same goal. Yes, they had this master, this rabbi, that kind of was like leading the way, but they're all still pushing and trying to get to that same point. Same way with this group, or any group that you have, is when we are trying to grow as disciples ourselves, when we're trying to learn, how can you be a disciple of Christ if no one's teaching you?
You're right.
And so that's where discipleship comes in, is who is our ultimate discipler? Jesus is. Right. He taught us the way. He showed us the sacrifice. I mean, here's the sacrifice. But how do you live that out? What does that practically look like? Right. No one is telling you, like, okay, go forth and make disciples of all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father and Son and Holy Spirit. Okay, well, I can't baptize people. I'm not supposed to unless it's a time of extraordinary need. Yeah. How am I supposed to do this when I'm a layperson? I'm a married man. I'm not a deacon. I can't do these things. Well, what does that look like?
That's a great point with discipleship. Like people talk all the time, like, define our terms. What does that mean? And I think so many times, like you brought up, discipleship is a big word these days, but are we using it in the right ways? And there's been podcasts out there like, okay, what does discipleship really mean? Is it mentorship, or is there? And I actually struggle with that. Even calling things that I do, I struggle calling it discipleship, because in the true terms of discipleship, we're doing stuff like you're talking about. We're talking about we're following this every day. We go to this master's door and we knock on his door, or we just live in community together, and that's not the reality of our lives. So it doesn't seem like anything that I ever do is exactly discipleship, but it's kind of like that, but it's not exactly like that.
Right, and I don't know if the way that our culture and society is built now, that we could actually have that discipleship where it imitates what it was, because we're not going to go buy a big mansion. Like, we're going to... Our group sells all our houses. We go live in this huge mansion and raise our families together.
But to your point, you do hear about it a little bit. If you go to Newman Centers and places like that, they have houses, like the Catholic fraternity in Lincoln. Like, I would have to imagine that there is some kind of a rule of life at that fraternity. Or in these different Newman Centers at smaller colleges, they'll have a house. This is the guy's house.
Franciscan University has households.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like miniature fraternities or sororities, but they're not fraternities and sororities. It's where they live together in community, and each different household has like a different charism or different things that they are like. One is really devoted to the Virgin Mary, or the Eucharist, things like that.
Dude, you know what I just thought of? No, bro. You know what I just thought of? I'm thinking in my head, like, if only I lived with a group of people that followed me around everywhere that I could teach the ways of Jesus to. Oh, yeah, I just left there. It's across the street. But so in a way, it's like we're living in little groups of our own little orders. Like, this is the Stevenson order, the Sanchez Hidalgo order.
Right, that's what the domestic church is.
It's the domestic church. Look at us coming to these realizations, and which is our primary battlefield. We are called to primarily be concerned with our own families, for those of us that are married, but there still needs to be an overarching community of us who know each other. Like, hey, this is working well for my family. What about your family? Where we're able to dive in and really. And I think that's where I missed out on a lot when I was younger in my marriage. I wasn't teaching my kids the disciplines of the faith. Like, I wasn't teaching them to pray the rosary. We were going to Mass on Sundays, but now we go to Mass infinitely more. We're learning how to pray the Angelus. There's certain part of our days that are structured, albeit with our relationship in mind. We're not just doing things to do things.
Right.
We're doing things out of a devotion to Jesus Christ, but our day is structured where we're like, okay, we're going to go to Mass at noon. We're going to pray the rosary before that. We're going to pray the Angelus at 6, noon, and 6. We're going to do these different things. And that's our rule of life at this house, where we're learning the disciplines.
Right, and I think that's so important to where, if you look at what discipleship is, I love, and I don't know if you stole it from somewhere, but the disciplined relationship.
And I think I made it up, but I bet I stole it. And really, it's not all that mind-blowing.
But it is. I think it's so crucial, because anything in faith takes discipline.
Yeah.
If you don't have that rhythm, and we've talked about this in the show recently, you're not going to do it. If you didn't do the Angelus at 6, 12, and 6... and you only did it sometimes at 6 at night, but only sometimes.
Right.
There could be weeks that go by that you don't do it. And you're like, oh man, we need to get back on doing the Angelus.
Right.
If you don't do any of those things, you lose it.
Right.
And it's because we're human, and we're going to put other things that, like, you don't forget to eat because you get hungry. You don't forget to sleep because you get tired.
Right.
Praying the Angelus isn't something that automatically comes into your day.
Right.
And it's not something that you have to do.
But so often people talk about losing that relationship because they've lost their disciplines, and even like a friendship or like a marriage. There, just one of my relationship with my wife supposes certain practices, certain disciplines. There are certain things, there are certain ways that I'm required to act towards my wife, or should act at least, because of this relationship. And if I don't have that, I'm going to soon lose that relationship. I think the same thing goes in the spiritual life.
Yeah, and I think, so people talk about having that friend from high school or college or their childhood that's like, you can go months or years without talking to them, and then you just pick up right where you left off.
Yeah.
The problem is that you're picking up where you left off, and there's been years. And so, and this happens at my family reunion all the time.
Yeah.
I go to a family reunion down in Texas every summer, and most of the conversations end up just catching up about life and telling other people what you've done the last year of your life.
Yeah. Even
though we have social media and all these things, is because we don't talk as often as we should. And instead of like guys that are in this small group that I'm in who hear about those things every week, but then also if there's like struggles, like, oh, well, they know that I was struggling to get my daily prayer in.
Yeah.
And things like that, where it's like things that really matter. And that's really where that Haverum, that comes into play, is what are you actually talking about? Like you talked about at the gym. You can talk about the Huskers, you can talk about different sports, coronavirus, all these things. But then do you ever get down to talking about what your faith is, where your struggles are? And are those people there to push you and say, all right, no, maybe you are struggling, but what can you do to pick that back up? How can I hold you accountable? I think accountability is one of the biggest things. And
that's probably where I would say, I've even thought about that myself, where like I have these certain practices I do every day. I have these disciplines. I'll pray the rosary, I'll go to Mass, I'll do the Angelus, I'll read the Bible. There are things I do, and even things at work that I do, where I'm doing things with students, where I'm doing things with adults. And I've thought on occasion, like, man, where would I be, though, without that Saturday morning group? Without, like, because those things are, like, personal, family, work, but this is, like, a friendship. This is accountability where like my family kind of keeps me accountable a little bit. My work doesn't really, as far as, like, as far as my faith life. But with these friends, I would always look, I'm like, you know what, Saturday mornings are my favorite. Like, where I'm, like, not my favorite than my family. I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that, But when it's like a special time, I should say that. It's one of my favorites in a unique way, where I'm sitting here and like someone's keeping me accountable in a way that only sometimes like a brother, like, because as I was talking about earlier, like, no offense to my wife, she's a great lady, but I'm too heavy for her to drag me to Mass. Like, if I don't want to go to Mass, she's not gonna be able to drag me to Mass. But having other guys around me who are like, hey, we're men and we go to Mass and we're cool too. And Chris Poutre can fix everything and can make every food. I hope he's watching. Like there are certain characteristics that our guy friends have, where I'm like, man, yeah, that's a man. And he's calling me to more. So as a man, I'm looking at him and being like, I want to be like that too. I'm going to strive for holiness as well.
Right. And I think, so going back to what discipleship is, it's in Acts 2:42. It talks about what the apostles did.
Yeah.
What disciples do. They follow the teachings of the apostles. So you learn what the teachings are, reading either through tradition or through reading the Bible. Right. These are things that we need to do as disciples. There's fellowship, and that's what we're talking a lot about today, is that fellowship. Yeah. Breaking of the bread, so going to Mass.
Yeah.
And then prayer. And if you encapsulate all those things, we can do that. Yeah. We can do discipleship like that, holding each other accountable for those things, doing those things outside of Mass and outside of the church. But like you said, getting together with the group is so important, because doing it on your own, you can slack off, you can do things. And spouses as accountability people are good. Yeah. But sometimes it takes, you get used to your wife and you get used to your husband. And there's so many things that we hold each other accountable for in that relationship because you have so many responsibilities together that sometimes the faith is not going to be the thing, because you just had a kid. Congratulations
to
to Adam. Just had another son.
Adam, not to Rachel.
And Rachel, too. To the Stevenson family. To the whole family, because you added a new one.
Baptized, too, on Sunday, so that's great. But you're right, when it comes to, I think that for previous generations knew, you listed 4 things right there. And sometimes when you look at the Catholic Church, it's there's so many things. And yeah, that's true in a sense, but there are just really a few things that we need to do. And I think it's helpful when you have a little list like that, because people, they think they get confirmed and they're like, all right, well, what do I do now? And it's just go to Mass on Sundays and then I'm good, right? Right. And it's well, maybe there's a little bit more to it. Breaking of the bread is a part of it, but you listed 3 other things that weren't breaking of the bread. Right.
And as you get deeper into them and as you grow as a disciple, because it's not just you're not a disciple, you're a disciple.
Yeah.
There's phases.
Right.
And we can get into that later. That's more than a 30-minute thing could ever encapsulate. But as you pray and go over the teaching of the apostles, you realize, then I need to add this into my life.
Right.
I need to evangelize because that's what they taught us to do.
Yeah.
I need to go and do these things. But it's all part of a process, and that holding someone else accountable is so important because, one, if you don't have someone that's leading you, you can't know. The Ethiopian eunuch, great example of how can I unless someone shows me what this means?
Right.
How can I know what I'm praying about and doing all these things is good, is what God wants, if I'm not talking to someone about it? And someone can just be like, whoa, Jonathan, you need to check yourself because that is just out of line.
Yeah.
God is not asking you to leave your family and go live in a hermitage somewhere.
Yeah. That's a good point. And I think that's totally true. And we've seen that a lot in our friend group too, where guys will get on I don't know if the word's a wild hair. Guys will start getting these ideas and this is a thing, and it's good to have, I take Sean Finneran, for example. I think that Sean Finneran and I are such good friends because I can be really crazy and he can be really level-headed, so
yeah, he's pretty even-keeled.
Because if I have some really crazy idea, Sean can be whoa, man, let's really think about this for a second. Let's think of the implications of what you're saying right now. But then on the other hand, it can be a nice give and take because I can be a little crazier and kind of encourage him to do some things maybe he wouldn't have done in the first place.
Right.
This is a nice friendship.
And so, last thing from this book, and it's because of the Christian fellowship, everything else, Dr. Sri mentions just coal. So coal that you would build a fire with.
Yeah, great one.
Not Kohl's, the store.
That's what I said. Oh, Kohl's, I've been there. Are they open again?
And so Kohl's, when you're building a fire, when you want to cook, you put the coals together.
Yeah.
Because when they're together, they're going to burn longer and hotter than if you separate even just a couple or even if you separate one. You separate one, and there's a fly in here that's been driving me nuts. It's right here.
Oh, I see him.
There was a fly in here.
That's a song of the nursery rhyme?
Shoot fly, don't bother.
You separate one.
So you separate one coal, and it's going to burn out quicker, and it's not going to be nearly as hot.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing that happens with the Christian life. That if you do not have a Christian community, we are working on digital ways to do that this fall.
Yeah.
I am currently working on a way to just really work on this discipleship and what it means and how to present it to you guys, because doing it alone, it greatly diminishes the opportunities you have to grow as a disciple.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you can't do it, doesn't mean that it's not been done, but when you do it together, there's going to be people firing you up, just like in a gym. I think so many of what you learned is working in the gym translates so well into what you're doing now and trying to build up people.
Even in the working out solo compared to working out in a group, there was a movement to move away from personal training to group training, because when you're working around other people, you're well, hey, look what that person's doing. I want to exercise like that too. Look at, it's possible to be in that good a shape. I would like to do that too. It makes it.
And people even do if they're going for their max weight on a bench press or something.
Sure, yeah.
If there's a group of guys around them cheering them on,
it's different.
They're able to get that adrenaline rush and push a little bit more. Just the same way if you're doing a group workout.
Right. Because
everybody else is still going and pushing through and suffering together, you can do a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so I think...
And think of the bond. Did you go on that hiking trip with those guys? Did you?
I didn't. No.
Well, none of us went there. Neither of us went there. But a group of guys after we finished Exodus 90, they're like, "Hey, we're gonna go hike up a mountain or something like that." And you think about, they're all hiking up that. 4 or 5 of them or whatever are hiking up that mountain, and they're encouraging each other, "Hey, we're gonna do it. I know we're old men, not that old, but like they felt like old men. I know we're old men, let's keep climbing, all that stuff. Like they were encouraging each other to climb up that mountain because of that friendship. And they can always look back at that time, like, remember that day on that mountain? Oh, I thought we were never going to make it. And we think about the bonds that not only do ladies have with their children through suffering, like they have a special bond with that baby, but as men, we have bonds with each other through suffering. When we go through sports trials or military trials or hiking up a mountain with your pals trials.
Well, even in relationships, like when you've gone through trials with your spouse, you come out stronger, especially if you rely on God and get through it.
Right.
But that is the heart of the Christian life is we will suffer. Jesus told us we're going to suffer.
Yeah.
If we can suffer with other people, those shared experiences really strengthen our bonds. And so then when other trials come, it's like, that's not a big deal because we dealt with this, which was way harder, way more difficult, and we got through it, and look at us now.
Right. Totally.
Jonathan Texera said, who are you calling old?
I think I'm calling Jonathan Texera old. Because he was there. I'm definitely calling Jason Oberg old, and if he ain't, let's pray for Jason Oberg. He looked like
he just threw his old back. He threw his back out, not his old back.
I know.
He's still a young guy. But actually, Jonathan, if you would, Amanda and Jonathan are parishioners here. They have this they do this thing with finances.
Yeah,
and they're actually going to be part of a Catholic marriage summit this weekend. That's free for all people. They asked us to advertise it on our flock note that goes out on Fridays, but they told us after the flock note went out on Friday. So Jonathan, if you could post a link to this Catholic marriage summit that is free for all people. It's this weekend. There are tons and tons of speakers. Jonathan and Amanda actually will be speaking a little bit about finances there.
Awesome.
But it's a great opportunity to grow in, just grow in your faith in your marriage.
Yeah.
And so he's going to get this in like 5 seconds because it's delayed.
Yes, he is.
So it's a little bit hard. But we should probably come to an end. It is Father Jeff's birthday.
Oh, I forgot.
See, I wasn't going to forget.
See, there you go.
So happy birthday, Father Jeff.
Happy birthday.
We're glad that you don't have to deal with me for your birthday.
Imagine that. Okay.
But Adam wanted to sing happy birthday. So.
Are you a good singer? Well, I've been hearing things about how much. Let's face this way, because when we sing, we actually produce more.
Yeah. So we'll face the camera.
Yeah.
And this is for.
Look him in the eyes. He's probably not watching. He's retreating.
Yeah, he's retreating. He's supposed to be deep in prayer, but he's gonna watch this back one day.
Yeah.
And I'll cut it, and send it to him.
That's a great idea.
All right. So if you guys want to join us at home, send pictures or videos of you singing happy birthday to my email, Jonathan, Jonath. Send it here. Jonathan at scbccomaha.org. My goodness, we need to change that email. But send pictures or videos of you guys wishing happy birthday to Father Jeff, and I will make sure he gets them. I'll maybe compile them in a video. And we should have done this yesterday, but here we are.
Hopefully he's not watching real time so he doesn't ruin the surprise.
Yeah. He's not. He doesn't.
He's levitating right now.
Probably.
Yeah.
So, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Father Jeff. Happy birthday to you. The octave is coming to a close. 20 years of ordination and...
No kidding.
I won't mention his age, even though if you paid attention, you could get it together.
I don't know, but he's over 40 though.
He's over 40.
No, I don't know if I have enough time to do choir here too. I mean, I know we're gonna get asked about that good singing voice that we had. They're gonna want us in.
They probably
tell Judy, Judy, I know we sang well, but only for special occasions.
Have a good one, guys. We're just gonna go.